Hi everyone, I'm at Jen's house today and she was telling me about a problem she had with her ant farm and said it was full of ants. However, having arrived today, she said they've gone. So we're going to have a look inside and see what's going on in there. And you can see she's collecting some juice over the side here. Where's my hand there? Just there. And it doesn't smell at all, which I'm happily surprised about. So she's concerned there might be soldier flies in here, but we will know when we have a look inside. So let's get a bit closer. Okay, so the big reveal. Now this was under her son's veranda and it was leaking fluid all over the tiles, which she didn't think was a good idea. So she's moved it down here. Some beautiful paper on the top, but that's a bit too dry for my liking. That should be wetter to keep the moisture in the food. Otherwise it's hard for anything to break it down. Now there's a few little bugs in there, but that's normal. They're just little compost bugs, you know, fruit flies, things like that. And I'm pretty sure I saw a worm just a minute ago, but let's have a dig. Oh yes, look at that. Beautiful, look at that. Oh, now there's a soldier fly. See there? Yep. That's a soldier fly. Now it's very unusual for them to be in a worm farm with the worms. They will usually get rid of your worms, and not because they eat them, but because the soldier flies produce a leachate, and that leachate, it smells like ammonia, and the worms don't like it. It's quite acidic. So eventually, if they overtake your worm farm, you'll have no worms left, and it'll be full of soldier flies, and it'll be super stinky. But one way to, oh look, there's lots in here. We've got a nice healthy worm farm going on here. So one way to prevent that soldier fly issue is to put that covering on top of your waste every time you put it in your worm farm, and then you will have less issues with the soldier flies. Because once they find your worm farm, they're very hard to get rid of, especially when you've got a lid and they can't escape, because they'll, you know, keep trying to reproduce underneath the lid if they can, if there's enough room for them to fly around and mate with each other. There's another one, see? So there's a few in here, but they don't, it's not overrun with them. It doesn't appear to be overrun with soldier flies. See that? And if you were really good, you'd shred this paper and put it wet on top, because that, I think, is a much easier, well, it's nicer for the worms. Although, really, just do whatever works for you, really. If it's easy to put that paper on top and wet that paper, then stick with that. But it really does need to be more moist than that to keep the moisture in the waste and keep your worms happy. And it doesn't look, oh yeah, there's some big soldier flies there. Look at that, Jen. See those huge ones? Oh wow. Yeah, they're big ones. They're big ones. Now they're getting close to pupating, because I can tell, because they're starting to get, well, it's getting slow because it's winter. And they are hairy ones too. And yeah, and you often find hairy ones in when you've got more, when it's a wetter environment. So you can find them in different sorts of environments. This is still pretty healthy though. It's not overrun with worms, with soldier flies at all. And there's lots of worms in here. So I don't think you need to worry at this stage. And I'd just keep doing what he's doing. I don't think that needs any changing, really. If you were going to change, the only other thing I would suggest is doing my system of a compost in a planter pot. But if this is working for him, I'd just stick with this.
I've added there was no paper, so I think I need to.
Oh, you've added the paper, yeah.
So it's a little bit dry.
Yeah, it's a really good idea to have shredded paper in there. It gives it that balance of those greens and browns.
We've also had loom clippings and dry leaves as well. Do they need adding?
You can add them, but they're better put on the top as a cover.
Yeah, okay, so
and again wet.
Yeah, okay.
So because when they're wet, it keeps the environment moist under there. So if all these contents dry out, it's too hard for the worms to eat. So that's why you really need that cover, and that cover will also stop that odour from coming out and attracting the soldier flies. So what you've done there is good, but I would be making sure that covered right up to the edges, you know, sort of, you know. I mean, but that's being a bit pedantic, you know. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be absolutely fanatical. If what's working is working, just stick with that.
So should you take the hairy
No,
So
just
flies
leave them
out.
in.
Yeah,
Look,
yeah.
if you really wanted to, you could take them out and feed them to the birds. But that's a bit of effort digging through that
Yeah,
just to
right.
find a few soldier flies. Yeah, I wouldn't
As long as
bother.
they're not overrun.
Yeah, that's right. And if they can't get out later with the lid on, they'll die.
Oh,
But let's have a look at what's underneath and see
yes.
if we can see if there's anything happening under there. And I'll use that lid to put this on.
So that's new.
Actually, this is quite a nice one. It's quite easy to lift. I've tried a few worm farms, those big round ones, and the trays are really hard to lift. Now there we go. Look, look at them all there.
Wow.
Yes. Now,
Perfect, isn't it?
well, it is and it isn't, but they can't get
They're
out
dead.
from there.
Oh, no, they're moving. Yeah, okay.
And
That's all right.
that-
So if we were to scoop them up and keep them for the birds, it'd be...
Now see, if that worm farm looks like he might be on the way out. If those worms get into your juice below, they'll drown in that
Will,
juice.
Yeah. So they've just so that's a new thing I added. Because I found it
did
was
you?
dead, so, yeah.
Yes, well you really need this second layer. So if you wanted to tip this out on the garden, yes, you could tip those out on the garden. Don't bother killing them because they're really good guys. But
Okay, so they'll make their own way.
they'll look after themselves. They'll bury down into the soil and pupate and do whatever. But if these guys get in that bottom tray, they can block your tap up. So let's have a look. Oh, see, there you go. Whoa! Now, now smell that. You can smell that straight
now
away,
it's off,
can't
yes,
you? Yeah.
yes.
Now, what's interesting, you've got a very, very small amount of juice that's come out the other end, which is quite. Let's actually look at that comparison. So here we have. Oh, this is really thick in the bottom. I can feel it. Yeah. So this could be part of the soldier fly leachate. I'm just trying to get that in the video. Yeah. So here is the juice, and look at that sludge in the bottom. Now that would be the sludge created from the leachate of the soldier flies, but it could be a bit of combination of both. But look at this. Look at that sludge. So this is what will happen when it gets overrun with soldier flies, and you're not going to get. See that there? How that's quite. Oh, there's a dead worm in there. So you. And my guess is actually that tap may well be blocked now. Yeah. So this is the problem when that happens. That's why you don't really want the soldier flies in your worm farm. So you really need to cover that waste so that odour isn't getting out, attracting them, because they can get through those tiny little holes in the lid. If all you wanted was the soldier flies in there, don't worry about your worms. But you've got to deal with this, and then.
So if they had a proper compost, they could all be transferred into that.
Well, if you had a compot in the pot sitting on the ground, so again we're trying to think of a way to make it easy for him to compost, right? All he'd have to do is take the lid off, put his waste in, put his doggy bags around the outside, grab some bush from some leaves from the garden, throw that around the outside and on the top of the pot, and that's it. And it'll look after itself. And all this sludge will go down into the soil and feed your plants, so you don't have to do anything. And the rain will dissipate that. So at this point, you really need to clean all that out, and you're going to have to flush that tap to unblock it, I'd say.
Yeah. Okay.
And then, of course, decide whether you want to just upend those in the garden.
Good.
I think you should do that, yeah. Put that on top of here again, and they'll go back into this bottom one because they don't like the light. So hopefully that'll force them to go back down. Yeah. So the question is, do you want to try and empty this now while I'm here, put it all into a big bucket, because this is incredibly nutritious stuff, and you can dilute it then and use it as liquid fertiliser. But you need a bigger bucket than that little one. So she's just going to go and get a big bucket, and we'll see if we can clean this worm farm up. There's a little worm there. Now if he goes too far into the water, he's going to drown, so I might just see if I can get him out. Oh dear, here we go. Here we go there, little fella. Actually, I think he's already... I think he might have already died, that guy. And see this guy here, I wonder if he's still alive. Yeah, he looks like he's on his way out too. He's died because he's come down here. And this is pretty potent stuff. The worms can't live in this, and probably the soldier flies can't either when it gets to that stage. So they probably die too. In fact, there's a dead one. Now, when you've got a pot in the ground, a compot in the ground, or in my above ground method, in a planter pot, you don't get this sludge build-up because it's going into the ground all the time. And every time you fill your pot up with that water and waste, it flushes all this stuff into the ground and nourishes your plants straight away. And all you've got to do is keep topping up your pot. But if you love this method of the worm farming, you have to consider this issue, that you'll have to, every probably 6 months I'd imagine, give this a good clean out. So let's have a go at emptying. I don't know how we're going to empty this. We do it spoon by spoon maybe, or chip it up. Chip it up. Ooh, hang on. That's going to be yucky, yucky.
Oh,
hang on.
Let's get the legs out.
Let me put this video back a bit and get out of the way. Get that. That's pongy,
so
isn't
that's
it?
a nitrate.
Yeah.
So,
hang on. It is gross. This is going to be really sloppy. So, yeah. Ooh, goodness. It looks like poo, doesn't it?
So other people refer to it as
stinky.
liquid gold. What is that
Well,
lump
it is.
in the middle? Holy, really? Look
Let's
at
have
that.
a look.
It's a whole dome.
No, that's part of the worm farm.
Oh, good. Why is it centralised?
And now, now this is perfect to save, as I say, and make it into.
Do you have to water it down?
Yes, absolutely. It's way too rich like this.
Yes.
And you can see it's complete sludge. But see, if that's going into your ground gradually inside a compost, it's a really slow release. It's not this fast release. Now what we have to do is get a hose.
Got it.
And I might turn this around the other way so the tap's facing down the hill. And then we might look at all those little bugs hanging around it. I put the tap here. This is all going to go out on the ground now. And we just put the tap in there and see if it's... Oh yeah, at least it's not blocked. Yeah, good.
Oh, good. Excellent.
Perfect. Oh, here, catch that in here.
Oh, good.
Yeah, get that.
So water it down as well.
Yes, hang on, take the tap out. Yeah. Ooh.
It's pretty squashy, isn't it?
Yeah, we don't want to lose that beautiful juice.
Oh, wow. See that?
And that'll dilute that too.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. Now, I was at another lady's house a few weeks ago, and she had a bucket like this out in the ground that she puts weeds in, which I do at home to rot the weeds down. Yes.
Right, I've done that too.
But it stunk like, you've got to have it covered.
Yeah.
So if this starts to smell, you need to find a way to either decant it into bottles and seal it, or put some kind of a cover over it so that odour doesn't get out. That might be enough actually. Because otherwise then it's going to overflow this bucket down here and we're going to have another problem on our hands. That's looking pretty good. At least it didn't clog up your tap.
Yeah, no,
which is good.
Or just, there are only recent additions in there too.
But very interesting to see how thick that sludge was in there. One of my, the lady that, so Hendrika, who grows worms, and I get them from her for people that want to pick up worms, she flushes her worm farm regularly with water.
Okay.
So the whole, like the 3 layers, she'll flush it at the top, and but she's got hers sitting out in the garden under a tree, so all those nutrients are going straight into the ground. And that's something you really need to do on a regular basis if you don't want to get the soldier flies in there.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I think I'll have to visit my office.
Does your son eat meat?
Not a lot.
Okay, so he's mainly a veggie eater? Yeah. Because the other advantage of having a compost is that you can put all your meat in there and your dog poo, everything can go in there.
Yeah.
There's 2 in his household?
No, 2 girls, 4.
4 of them.
Yeah.
So 1 pot and this might be enough. So you could have 1 pot extra to put all the onions and meat and citrus and dairy and things like that in to attract your soldier flies.
And put them in a separate.
And put them up away from your worm farm so the soldier flies are attracted to it up there, and then you'll have less chance of them coming into your worm farm.
So quite happily there with the stinky bits.
That's right. And if you cover the worm farm properly so you're not attracting the soldier flies into the worm farm, then you can have the best of both worlds basically.
Oh, that sounds perfect.
I think that's probably, I don't know that it's worth worrying about that little tiny bit because that's going to build up again anyway, isn't it? But now,
so when you talk about worm castings, are they sort of individual? Because I thought I was expecting.
Let's put this back on top and I'll show you the worm castings.
Okay. I thought they'd be more pellet-like.
See, look, those worms up the top came up. Look, see?
Okay,
Yes, they came out of that. They didn't like the light, and they've dropped down into this tray.
Oh, yeah.
You can just, put them down below for you. That's it.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad there's not a great mortality rate.
No, well, actually, you've been lucky, because if those soldier flies had taken that over, your worms will all die.
Right.
And not because the soldier flies kill them, but the worms don't like that leachate. It's very acidic.
Yeah,
it's like fermented waste.
Yeah.
And also, the soldier flies will eat all the food, leaving nothing for the worms. So then the worms are self-regulating, and they'll eat each other. So then you'll end up with no worms, and you'll have a really big smelly above ground worm farm, not worm farm, soldier fly farm,
Right.
which is something that I don't think you want to have. I think you're better off having your soldier flies with the juice going into the ground,
Yeah, directly.
directly into the ground, no smell then, and then hopefully you can keep this odour free as well.
Yeah.
But that's the idea is, of course, is that the worms will eat this and the castings will drop into the bottom, or they'll accumulate here. So I think what you're actually supposed to do is have this one on the bottom, and then you put that other one on the top. So the next stage with your further waste, you put it on the top with your covering on top, and eventually the worms will finish that at the bottom, move up to the top, then you'll be left with the castings, which is all there. Okay, sometimes this camera says it's stopped and it hasn't, and I can't tell. Oh, there. Oh no, I think we missed all that. Oh, the damn well stopped.
Oh, did it?
See, look, it's starting to record now. Oh my god.
Oh no.
Oh my god. Let's go back a few steps and see if we can't salvage some of that.
Okay.
So we think, hi everyone, I think the video stopped, typical of my experiments. And what we did with Jen's worm farm is we put the tray of food on the bottom with all the worms and the soldier flies in there. We're not going to worry about them, we're going to leave them. Then we gave it a water, and the juice came out the bottom, into the bottom here. We covered this then with the paper and wet the paper as well to keep that nice and moist. Then we put the old tray on top, and it's now ready to fill with food waste. And there's a bit of a gap there, isn't there? See,
It is actually.
yes, don't like that, but anyway, nothing's
Just
perfect.
paper or something.
Yeah. Anyway, this is ready now to put food in it and some more wet paper on top to keep those soldier flies from getting into your food scraps. And I can't believe we missed that.
Well, I got an education anyway.
Yes.
No one else did.
And this is the sludge that we had left over, which you can see it's beautiful and liquid once you mix it all up. It's a bit stinky like this, so it needs to be covered or diluted down. You better chuck that. Do you want to leave that tap going so everything,
think
so the
so,
juice
yeah.
drips out all the time?
Yeah, I think
That's
so.
probably a
Can't
better
hurt it,
idea.
because then it's a
No.
gradual dispersal. So
If that
guy
stopped
had it.
dripping, then you probably know it's blocked.
Well, that's the other thing. That's why I turned it back to see whether the worms were still in there after
Yeah.
discovering those other things. They were still, and I was delighted to find that
They
were
were,
still there.
yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
no ants, see? The ants have
Yes,
obviously just come
yes.
by and left because it's
Check it
too
out.
wet in there.
Yes.
If it gets too dry,
Yep,
the ants
they'll
will
be
come
back.
and
Yep,
they'll nest
right.
in there, yeah.
Yeah, didn't need the ants. So that was a big surprise. But just, doing the leg deterrent
It
thing.
stopped. Oh, dear. Anyway, Jen, I think we've got... I think we can't go over all that again. Thanks for watching.